Hi there, welcome back again. Today I'm going to be taking you with me while I work on a miniature bathroom renovation. I found 2 Kallax units going for free on Facebook Marketplace, and I grabbed them immediately because I figured that the cube shelves could work really well as doll rooms. Now, for some rooms, I have found that they are actually not quite as wide as I would like. However, I do think that this bathroom is going to fit really well. As you can see, I have already made a start. I have a YouTube short showing you how I did this miniature tiling, and then I also just hand painted all these black and white tiles onto some paper that I cut to size, which took forever. But I think it came out pretty good in the end, despite a little bit of paper rippling. Anyway, we already have our repainted Cindy toilet in here, but I have plans for a sink and a shower. I went scrolling on Pinterest again to try and find myself some inspo, and decided that I want one of these nice modern showers with like a freestanding glass divide thing, partly because I like the look and partly because I think it will be pretty simple to make. The reason I made this entire back wall tiled is because that's where the shower is going to go. So, first things first, I'm going to need to make a shower tray for the floor. I have some foam board here that I'm going to use, and I'm going to just cut a rectangle to size. As you can see, I had to patch a tiny bit at this edge here because my foam board was A4 and not quite long enough. However, I don't think it's super visible, so I don't mind that. Then I've got some little strips of foam board that I'm going to use to kind of box it in. However, I think beforehand I'm going to actually cover the top of the shower tray as well as wrapping all these little pieces I've made, just to hide that seam and also the foam on the top. Now that all of my little foam board pieces are wrapped, I'm just going to, like I said, kind of frame in this base here. Now that the shower tray is all done, I need to make myself a shower drain. The best port of call here would probably be to just print out an image of one and glue it on, but I don't have a printer, so I'm going hunting in my stash of spare buttons for something that can pass as one instead. Okay, I found some options here. Honestly, this little bobbin spool is probably the most convincing as a drain. However, obviously it's double layered, so I genuinely have no idea how I would even go about separating them. And yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to use that. I also have these 2 buttons. I also really like this one as a shower drain. To be honest, I don't even know if it's a button. It's something along those lines, but it obviously has some depth to it. So if I was to place it on my shower tray, it would be kind of elevated. I suppose maybe I could try and push it into the foam board itself, but I'd probably have to cut a little hole in my paper topper that I added. So if I'm going to go with a slightly lower profile one, I also have this little metal button that would sit a bit more flush with the shower tray without much need for cutting and whatnot. And I think that one kind of works. It's probably not my favourite of the 3, however, it does seem to work the best. So I'm just going to glue that in place. Now we need to make the door for our shower, or rather the divider. I'm not quite sure what to call this thing. However, it's just a big piece of glass. And to find something that we can use for that, I'm going to go and look through my recycling stash again. In particular, this box of plastic. I know that I have a few good contenders in here, particularly because I know that I recently had to get rid of some old picture frames which had unfortunately succumbed to the damp issues that are common in English cottages. But anyway, now I have some nice rectangles of, I think you'd call this plexiglass, I'm not entirely certain. But anyway, that's definitely a possibility. I also have this sheet of plastic from some doll packaging, which I think could work well. However, it's so thin that it's much easier to cut than plexiglass, so I would probably rather save this for smaller crafts. Especially since the plexiglass sheets are kind of the perfect shape already. Now that I'm looking at them in the space though, we definitely have a problem. This is way too short. My first thought would be to try and double them up, because the kind of door that I'm going for has like these black strips all across it that I could use to hide a seam. However, that's now going to be too tall, and as a result we have an overlap, which is a lot harder to hide with the black detailing. That's a bit of a pickle. Maybe if I put them landscape and stacked them? I feel like that's still a little bit too short. I'm going to put my shortest doll in there as a test. And oh yeah, that barely covers her head, so any taller dolls would be kind of looking out over the top, and that's not what I'm going for. The thin plastic might be a slightly better height, but not very much, and I'm still disinclined to waste this. Okay, new plan. Some of those picture frames actually had glass inserts, which again I have zero facility to cut. They are smaller than the plexiglass sheets, however I thought that maybe doubled up portrait-wise. Oh, that's perfect height-wise. However, it is a little bit skinny. Maybe if I orient them landscape. Now that's too short. However, I do actually have 3 of these. So, oh, that's a perfect height and width. I'm pretty wary of working with real glass for this. However, I think that might just be too perfect to pass up. So we are going to try it. Now, attaching these together is definitely going to be a bit of a trial. I've already done a test with hot glue, and unfortunately the amount of overlapped hot glue you need to make them stay together is a little bit excessive. So instead, I'm going to try UV resin. I genuinely have no idea if this will work. However, this stuff is very sturdy, so we're going to give it a try. Quick notice before I begin, resin can be very damaging to your lungs when you inhale it, so if you're going to try and replicate this, please make sure to wear a mask of some kind and ideally also gloves. I don't have any gloves right now, so I am going to just try very hard not to touch any of the actual resin itself, and let's give this a try. I am am actually very pleasantly surprised by how well this has worked. Obviously there is a little bit of overspill, however I think that the black details will be able to hide that quite well. Speaking of those details, my plan for the black lines was to use black electrical tape. However, I have since discovered that the only electrical tape we have is bright blue. So instead I had a search and I found these rolls of like duct tape, and it is black, but obviously they are extremely wide. So I think I'm just going to have to improvise and cut them down to the width we want once they are applied to the glass. I don't know if that makes any sense, but this is all pretty much just a matter of trial and error, so we shall have a go. Okay, I did have to do a lot of that off camera because it turned out to be very fiddly. However, although it isn't entirely perfect, it does kind of create the impression I was going for. So now I'm going to try and attach it to my shower tray base. Ta-da! We have a shower. Well, most of one anyway. I will have to rig a shower head, probably out of more buttons and maybe some wire. However, for now I'm going to move on to a sink. For the sink unit, I think I'm going to try and convert this little 1/12 scale wardrobe from my childhood doll's house. Obviously it doesn't look like much right now, however it is nice and sturdy, and I think that it definitely has some potential. I think I'm going to start by removing this singular blue door here. I'm not quite certain how I'm going to do so, however I have noticed that there are these little holes on the opposite side, which makes me think there must have been a second door at some point that I've forgotten. So if that side came out, then I'm sure this side must be removable as well. Okay, I have managed to kind of pry off one edge. Unfortunately, I have chipped off some of the wood. However, now I can just slip this off, and we have a nice blank canvas, and we also have these little metal dowels that fit perfectly in the holes, and I'm going to reuse them when I make my foam board doors. Before I do that though, I'm going to just sand this a little bit and get it ready for painting. I was quite unsure what colour to paint this. I thought maybe grey to match the walls. However, I've decided to just go really simple and paint it white. Now that the sink unit is all painted, I've gone ahead and cut myself some rectangles of foam board to size so they can slot in and act as doors. Now you could just leave it like this, however I do kind of want these to be functional, and we still have those little metal dowels from the original blue door. So what I'm going to do is insert them back into those holes and then take my piece of foam board, measure exactly where it's going to need to be, and then insert into the foam part of the foam board. So now it is a hinge. Now I'm just going to pull that back out for now. Do the same on the top. And now we have a functional little door. You'll have to excuse my less than perfect cutting. My craft knives are all somewhat blunt. However, they did get the job done, so I'm okay with it. For the opposite side, I don't have the original little metal dowels, so I've just cut a couple of toothpicks down to size, and I'm going to use them instead. Now that we have two functional doors, the next thing to tackle is the actual sink itself. And I have a couple of options for this. First is this bottle cap. It's obviously the simplest one. However, it does have these ridges around the edge, plus it still has the kind of screw-on threads inside from, you know, being a bottle cap. So I'm not entirely sure whether I want that. And the second option is this empty chewing gum container. Now, obviously, currently it's not going to be any good. However, I think that with some careful cutting, I might be able to make this into quite a nice shaped little basin. So currently I'm leaning towards this option, and yeah, that means some trimming. Okay, I have whittled this down to make a nice sort of shape. This is actually the shape of one of my bathroom sinks at home, and then I've just kind of squeezed it so it's sort of a little bit more of an oval shape, and I think it looks quite convincing. Now we have some hardware to tackle. For my little doors here, I have just got some silver wire that I have bent into kind of like the shape of a very large staple. And I don't want to risk damaging my foam board too much, so I'm just using a hand drill to make some holes. Then I can just poke my little pieces of bent wire in there. And now we have some nice little handles for our cupboard. For the tap or faucet, I have some more of that same wire, and I'm just going to bend the end of it into kind of like a hockey stick kind of shape. And then for the actual kind of taps themselves, I'm going to take another piece of wire and bend it in the center. And then on each end, kind of just bend them outwards so they're flat, and then push the central bend together. And then for the ends of the taps, I have some tiny little seed beads, and I'm just going to carefully slot them onto each end. For the end of our little nozzle here, I found this little fixture thing that I used to use when I made polymer clay charms. And this specific little cylinder here kind of looks like the end of a tap to me. So I'm going to detach that. Very carefully trim off the end that has the little holes in. Sand it a little bit. Then I just have a tiny piece of sticky tack that I'm going to put inside the little cylinder. And then I'm going to poke the end of my hockey stick wire into that. And then I'm going to just place my nozzle into the center of the two tap pieces. And then I have a little strip of printer paper that I'm going to use to wrap the three pieces at the base. And now we have a little tap. Then I'm just going to attach it to the back of my unit. Add back our basin, and we have our finished sink unit. At least I had thought that it was finished. However, now that I'm looking at it in situ along with all the other things, I feel like it's a bit too white. Everything else has some kind of black accent to it. So I think I'm going to try painting these side panels here black and just see if that breaks it up a little bit. Okay, I do think that fits better. All I have left to do now is just make the last few accessories for my bathroom. I'm starting out with this towel rack that I'm constructing from some cocktail sticks and popsicle sticks. Once they're all glued together, I cover them in a coat of black paint, cut out a little square of muslin for a towel, and hang it over my towel rail. Next, I'm just wrapping this little rectangle of foam board in some tin foil, poking in this little piece of wire that I've bent into an L shape, and then slotting on the tiny toilet roll I made earlier to make our toilet roll holder. I'm going to make the shower head with another square of foam board wrapped in more tin foil, and then I'm just piercing some little holes in the bottom of it with a hand drill. Then I have this Allen key that I'm going to poke into the foam at the side, and that's our main shower head. Then I have another tinfoil wrapped piece of foam board that I'm going to poke the other end of the Allen key into the top of. To make the detachable shower head, I have this headphone earbud as well as this piece of keyring chain. I'm just going to slot this little tail end of wire from the headphone into this keychain connector piece, and then poke the other end of the chain into the bottom of our shower unit. I also have these two little split pins, which are gold, which isn't ideal. However, I'm just going to paint them black. And while we're waiting for them to dry, I'm going to make a place to hang our shower head using this adjustable ring base. I'll just pull the sides apart and trim them down, and then sticky tack this flat part to my shower unit. And then I can slot my shower head in there. Now that my split pins are dry, I'm just going to poke them into the sides of my shower unit. Finally, we have a mirror. I think we will be able to hide that bottom part behind the sink unit. So I'm just going to surround it with some strips of black craft foam. And now we're all ready to finish decking out our bathroom. Okay, I thought that this would work as a mirror. However, I am now realizing that in order to hide the broken part at the bottom behind the unit, it needs to be quite low down, and yeah, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So instead I have the lid from an old makeup panel that obviously has a mirror inside, and I did try to get this out of the sort of plastic surround, but as you can tell from this plaster, it did not go very well. So instead I'm just going to leave it on, and I actually think that the little hinge sort of lip here kind of looks like those lights that you sometimes get on bathroom mirrors that overhang the top. So I'm just going to place it a bit higher up on the wall. And with that, we are all finished. So I'm going to give you a little tour. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching me build this tiny room. If you did, then I would very much appreciate a like and maybe even a subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!